Two South Africans freed by Somali captors to fly home later today, and calls intensify for Eid and Deepavali to be declared public holidays. I'm Lebo Changela with this news update. The two South Africans released by Somali pirates Debbie Khaled and Bruno Pelizari are expected to fly home later today. Khaled and Pelizari were taken hostage in October 2010 when armed pirates hijacked their yacht off the Tanzanian coast. The Somali government says they're at the presidential palace in Mogadishu. Pelizari has spoken to reporters and says they're happy to get their freedom back. Armed pirates hijacked the Pez yacht off the Tanzanian coast. A third crew member was later rescued by the EU Anti-Piracy Naval Task Force. The pirates originally demanded a ransom of $10 million, or about 83 million rand, but the amount changed as negotiations continued. It's not clear if any ransom was paid. The South Africans' 20-month captivity is among the longest periods hostages have been held by pirates in Somalia. Calls are intensifying for Eid and Deepavali to be declared public holidays in South Africa. Some believe that the religious days observed by Muslims and Hindu communities, respectively, have been sidelined for far too long. The public will get to have their say during hearings organized by the Commission for the Promotion and Protection of the Rights of Cultural, Religious and Linguistic Communities. These get underway in Durban today. Director of the Islamic Interfaith Research Institute, Rafiq Hassan, says allocating a public day to Eid celebrations would be a challenge as it's not celebrated on the same date every year.
That would also create a problem because it doesn't follow the Gregorian calendar where it's fixed in terms of January, February, that kind of thing, but it changes because we follow the lunar calendar. So it would be problematic to fix a public holiday. What I'm just saying is that, our Heritage Day, and I'm for the idea of some of the days to reflect not just a Christian holiday, but maybe a religious holiday so that all religions and cultures can meet on that day.
The deficit on South Africa's current account, the difference between imports and exports, widened more than expected to 4.9% of gross domestic product in the first quarter. This up from 3.6% recorded in the fourth quarter of last year. Figures released by the Reserve Bank attributes the bigger deficit to the higher oil bill and increase in net dividend payment to offshore investors in the quarter. Johan van der Heever is head of research at the Reserve Bank.
The reasons for the increase are actually twofold. The one is that we actually paid a higher price for oil, and so our import bill went up a bit, whereas our exports were not good. They actually deteriorated a bit. The prices of some of our export products also were less juicy than before, and so the trade deficit widened. At the same time, on the services account, we also actually paid out more than previously, not least because of higher dividend declarations in the first quarter of this year.
And suspended crime intelligence boss Richard Mduli says he never signed any receipt to show he'd received notice of his suspension. Mduli's lawyers are arguing that his suspension is unlawful because he was never notified of it. Mduli was resuspended last month by acting police chief Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi. Mduli's first suspension last year was overturned in March when charges of murder, fraud and corruption were dropped against him. The SABC's Rochelle Seaton-Rogers is in court.
In his heads of argument, Mdluli denies assertions by Police General Fani Masemola that he'd informed him of his suspension in a 2-hour meeting on the 15th of May. Masemola said he'd informed Mdluli of his suspension and given him documents to this effect, which Mdluli had agreed to sign the next day. But Mdluli's lawyer Graham Moshwana says this is a fabrication by Masemola, as Mdluli didn't receive any notice of his suspension. Mdluli is arguing that his suspension be overturned due to the fact he never received notice of it. Rochelle Seaton-Rogers, SABC News, at the Labour Court in Johannesburg.